Hey, guess what's happening on this week's episode of the Beating Diabetes Lifestyle Podcast with your friend and host, Oscar Camejo.
If you're struggling with belly fat, that stubborn belly fat around your waist, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, your blood sugar is spiking all over the place, maybe you're even having some cholesterol issues, you are not alone. These are all signs of what's known as metabolic syndrome, and I'm going to break it down for you to give you a better understanding. In a nutshell, metabolic syndrome can make you feel like you're fighting an uphill battle when it comes to your health. But listen, I don't want you to worry, because in this episode, I'm going to break it down for you in very simple terms and offer you practical tips to help you take control of your health. Listen, it's time to take things seriously because, listen, none of us wants to be dealing with type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, being overweight, obese. Oh my God, there's so many things that a lot of people are dealing with. And I'm so glad that you stumbled onto this episode. You see, I'm going to give you some practical recommendations for improving your health. Listen, if I can do it, you can too. So stick around to hear the rest of today's episode. My friend, you definitely do not want to miss it. Let's go. Be sure to visit the website at www.beatingdiabetieslifestyle.com for access to free resources and other information that will help you along your journey. If you would like to submit a question or comment about the show or to learn more about the Beating Diabetes Lifestyle, you can always email me at hello@beatingdiabetieslifestyle.com. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Welcome to the Beating Diabetes Lifestyle Podcast with me, your host, Oscar Camejo, helping diabetics make lifestyle changes to reverse type 2 diabetes. Let's dive right into this week's episode, folks, understanding the connection between type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and obesity. I want to first shout out to all of my followers, my subscribers to this podcast, and also those who may be following me on social media like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. I want to shout out to you guys. You are so awesome. I thank you for being here with me on this journey. Listen, I know a lot of you all are dealing with health issues and you're concerned about your health. And I just want to provide an avenue for you to learn and hear from a guy who used to be 268 pounds. I used to be diagnosed with prediabetes back in 2018. I started gradually gaining a whole bunch of weight from 2015 to August 2020. Things were just kind of spiraling out of control. So I want you to know that I am a relatable person. I've been through what many of you all are experiencing. So whether you stumble onto this podcast because you're just searching for information on type 2 diabetes or high cholesterol, or you're dealing with some other issues, I am glad you're here. Maybe somebody in your family told you about this guy on this platform, and he has a podcast and he's talking about turning your health around and improving your health. Well, that's me. I used to be 268 pounds, like I said. But that weight it felt like it just creeped up. But actually, for about 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, I just started gaining a lot of weight. A lot of, things were going on in my life at the time, some good and not so good. And I was just living it up and dealing with some other personal challenges. And my weight just kept on creeping up. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I was diagnosed with prediabetes in, I want to say it was mid 2018. And I went to the doctor and, was experiencing different complications. And during this time, I just kept gaining weight, kept gaining weight. My diagnosis, again, at the time was prediabetes. I wasn't diagnosed with type 2 diabetes until much later, actually 2 years later in August 2020. But when I first started gaining a lot of weight and experiencing chest pains and some other things, I went to the doctor, and my doctor, said, hey, your cholesterol is up. And he was telling me about some other things that were going on. But in a nutshell, even though I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes, I didn't take that diagnosis serious enough. And then fast forward to August 2020, I had a scare and I ended up in the hospital. And it was in the hospital that I learned that I had type 2 diabetes. It finally hit me. I was eventually put on, of course, diabetes meds. I was prescribed some meds for high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And man, it was just like, it felt like it was out of nowhere, but this was a gradual thing that was happening in my life. But you know what? Once I eventually started taking my health serious, it wasn't just about the exercise. It was also about what I was putting in my body. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But in less than a year, folks, I was able to lose over 80 pounds. It wasn't easy. It took some time. Yeah, there was a balance between what I was eating and just moving more and exercising and living an overall healthy lifestyle. I was eventually weaned off of all medications. That didn't happen overnight. That happened gradually. As I started losing the weight, as I started improving my health, my doctor started weaning me off of medication. I want to say my cholesterol medication was probably one of the first things that he took me off of. And then the blood pressure medication. Then eventually I started being weaned off of insulin because I was taking insulin injections several times a day. And then I was taking an oral medication for type 2 diabetes. It was metformin at the time. So yeah, I was eventually weaned off of all medications because my health started getting better, folks. And I was able to reverse type 2 diabetes. Yes. And get my blood sugar levels back to normal. And it's been a great journey. And I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to share with you and many other listeners what it took for me to turn my life around and maintain a healthy lifestyle. Now, listen, I don't push any specific diets. I'm not going to push any specific programs. I'm all about helping people to develop a mindset for change so that they can experience a lifestyle change. Because you know what? Change starts in the mind. Folks, once we start changing our thoughts and our perception and how we approach and relate to food and our health and the things that we put in our body, the more we will see change and lasting change, because that's what it's all about, experiencing lasting changes in our life. Looking back, folks, I could have prevented my health from declining. I know it. But at the time, you don't see the gradual putting on of weight. You're not really paying attention to that. At least I wasn't. And it wasn't until one day I looked up in the mirror and I'm like, man, how did I get to be so big? What's going on with my heart, man? And it's like, oh my gosh, it's like when we get a car, we get a brand new car, right? We drive that car for a while. Everything's going good. And, every now and then you may have to change out the tires. Yeah, it's kind of routine and so forth. But then one day that check engine light comes on and we see the check engine light and it's been there, but it really doesn't mean that much because maybe our car isn't acting up, if you will. The engine isn't sputtering, but it isn't until the car stops functioning that we look back and it's like, oh man, I could have prevented the car from, breaking down if I simply paid attention to when the check light engine first came on and really did what I need to do to fix the issue instead of constantly putting it off. So if your check engine light is on, folks, if your doctor has diagnosed you with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, don't ignore it. If you have pre-diabetes, that check engine light, don't ignore it. Do what you need to do to tend to that check engine light. Okay, now let's move on. I often meet people who are struggling with type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. They may be dealing with obesity or they're just simply overweight and they're wanting to turn their life around. And I've noticed that there's been some common items or common things that a lot of these people experience, whether they're a busy coworker, whether they work from home or in the office, or they're just living an all-out stressed out life. And those common things are diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, high cholesterol, again, being overweight and so forth. And a lot of these people, they just simply want to turn their lives around. All right, let me give you two types of scenarios, right? You have the busy coworker. Let's call her Angie. Angie either works from home or in the office sometimes. Now, imagine her sitting at her desk for long hours, often eating fast food for lunch because you know what? She has to get back to work, right? And she rarely finds time to exercise. Over time, Angie starts noticing that she's gaining weight around her waist. Her blood pressure is creeping up, and her doctor mentions her blood sugar levels are higher than normal. She knows she has to do better. She knows she needs to take her doctor's advice, but she hasn't found time to really begin making the changes that are necessary. So she takes the meds that her doctor prescribes, and that's about it. And she knows that one day she will get back on track. Can you relate to Angie's story? What about stressed out Joe? Joe leads a very stressful life. He's constantly juggling work deadlines, traveling a lot sometimes, or just in and out, just constantly working. He has family responsibilities and social commitments. His stress levels are very high. He has poor sleep issues, not sleeping enough. And even when he does sleep, is very restless, constantly getting up in the middle of the night, having to use a restroom, and just kind of tossing and turning. On top of that, he has poor eating habits. He's always eating fast food. Like almost every day. And over time, his stress-induced lifestyle starts to contribute to his weight gain. He's looking in the mirror and he's like, man, what's going on? I'm like putting on extra pounds, and he's constantly dealing with headaches. Been diagnosed with prediabetes. Actually found out about prediabetes some time ago, but really didn't take it serious enough. And on top of that, was experiencing occasional chest pains. He hasn't gone to the doctor for quite some time. In fact, it's been over a year since his last doctor visit. And at that time, his doctor wanted to put him on meds, but Joe was like, nah, I'm not really on to the whole meds thing. I'm not really going to do that right now. So he kind of put that off, right? Now, Joe is heavier. It's been a year later, let's say. He's heavier than ever before, and he's feeling depressed. He's feeling down, but he's still working. He's still stressed out. He's still doing, the day-to-day, trying to keep things together, trying to provide for his family, whatever. And, on occasion, he thinks about, man, when I used to be an athlete, I was never this sick or feeling this bad. And he just starts feeling bad about himself even more and more. And he knows especially that, something has been going wrong, or just he hasn't been feeling well enough these last few weeks to really get out and do much. He knows something is wrong. Okay, so I told you about these common situations. Angie, are you like Angie? Often working from home or working from the office, and you just got a lot of things going on, a lot of things on your plate, and you're trying to get things together, and you're just kind of stressed out. Or are you like Mr. Joe, constantly stressed out, overworked, busy, and just really not focusing on your health? Well, Angie and Joe, they have some common issues: high blood pressure, weight gain, obesity, high cholesterol. Joe was dealing with some chest pains and some headaches. Angie was probably dealing with some, issues with her sleep as well. So what about you? What's your story? What's going on in your life? What is your health profile right now? If you can relate to any of the situations that I shared with you, whether it's like Angie's story or Joe's story, I want you to start taking your health seriously. Take it seriously enough to start making changes if you haven't already. Some serious commitments that you need to make for yourself and be highly accountable to your own self and to others so you can go ahead and start turning things around. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever wondered why when you first go to your doctor's office, they first check your weight, they check your blood pressure, your O2 or your oxygen level, they ask you some of the same questions every time you go. They ask you the questions about your health and how you've been feeling lately. Are you under any stress? Have you had any dizzy spells? How's your vision been? Experiencing any headaches and so forth. If you say yes to any of those questions whenever you go to the doctor, your doctor is typically looking for signs of declining health or maybe improvements in your health from the last time that you came and visited the doctor. You see, one of the things that your doctor is looking for in terms of your declining health, your doctor, he or she, wants to know, okay, what's going on so that we can go ahead and prevent things from getting worse, right? That's their job, right? For me, when I was going back and forth to the doctor and I started taking my health seriously, it wasn't until much later on in my health journey that I learned about this term called metabolic syndrome. Now, my doctor never told me about this, but when they would check for my blood pressure, they would check my blood sugar levels, they would check my cholesterol levels and so forth, and things were abnormal. They were looking, I later learned that they were looking for signs of metabolic syndrome. And in a nutshell, a metabolic syndrome is a cluster of conditions that tend to occur together. They happen pretty much around the same time, right? Or they develop together and you start experiencing these different things at the same time, right? These conditions include high blood pressure, as I mentioned before, high blood sugar levels, excess body fat around the waist, abnormal cholesterol, and so forth. And so when these conditions kind of gang up, they increase your risk of heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. I know people who have had mild strokes and severe strokes. They deal with heart disease, and some people have had heart attacks and passed away. And I want you to think of metabolic syndrome as when all of these things come together, they start wreaking havoc on your body. They're basically troublemakers, right? The high blood pressure, the high blood sugar, the high cholesterol or abnormal cholesterol levels, they start wreaking havoc on the body over time, especially if you don't tend to that check engine light that we mentioned earlier. So how does this all relate to type 2 diabetes? Well, metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes share a lot of the same risk factors. These include obesity, as I mentioned before, physical inactivity for some people, and something called insulin resistance. Basically, insulin resistance is when your body's cells don't respond well to insulin, like the natural insulin that your body makes, leading to higher blood sugar levels. Insulin is that hormone in the body that is created by the pancreas that allows your body to now absorb any glucose or blood sugar that's inside your blood, and sends that glucose where it needs to go to supply the body with energy, right? We're not supposed to have high levels of glucose or blood sugar in our bloodstream. It's just not healthy. It's not healthy for the eyes. It's not healthy for the nerves. It's not healthy for our pancreas. It's not healthy for our liver. And we're going to talk some more about that. But in a nutshell, insulin, naturally occurring insulin, helps to basically soak up the blood sugar or glucose from your blood and sends it where it needs to go so that your body can use the glucose for energy. That's in a nutshell what insulin does. And then insulin resistance, again, is when your body no longer pulls out the blood sugar like it needs to, when insulin just doesn't work like it needs to or like it's designed to. And so this is a major player. Insulin resistance is a major player in both metabolic syndrome and diabetes, specifically type 2 diabetes. So let me break it down even further for you. Now, the conditions of metabolic syndrome can manifest in different orders. There's not like one thing happens first and then the next thing and so forth. It occurs differently and in different combinations for different people. However, there are some common patterns when it comes to the progression of metabolic syndrome. Now, I want you to stick with me, okay? Now, insulin resistance, abdominal obesity, right? Around your waist, when your waist just starts getting bigger and bigger. You know what I'm talking about. Your high blood pressure, dealing with high blood pressure, dealing with high blood sugar levels, abnormal lipid levels. And we're going to talk about that some more. Basically, your lipid levels have to do with your cholesterol. So now let me break these down for you. All right, insulin resistance. This is one of the earliest signs and a central feature of metabolic syndrome. Insulin resistance, again, occurs when the body cells become less responsive to insulin, leading to higher levels of insulin in the blood and blood sugar, glucose in the blood to maintain normal blood sugar levels. Again, insulin is designed to make sure that you have normal blood sugar levels in your body. When things get too high, then insulin needs to do its job to soak up that blood sugar, that glucose, and send it to the parts of the body that needs it, that can use it for energy. All right, stick with me. Abdominal obesity. Excess fat accumulation around the waist, known as abdominal or visceral obesity, is a common feature of metabolic syndrome. It often occurs concurrently with insulin resistance. So as insulin resistance becomes more prevalent in your body, you start to gain more weight, and specifically weight around your organs. Now, there is what's called visceral fat and subcutaneous fat. So if you were to pinch your gut right now, your stomach right now, that fat that you feel, that's that subcutaneous fat. That's basically the fat that's right up underneath the skin. A lot of times we focus so much on that, but we don't realize, or we ignore, visceral fat and visceral obesity. Visceral fat is a fat around the organs, and that's the most unhealthy fat. And we don't want to accumulate too much visceral fat. And we can talk a little bit more about that. So there's a lot of things to research, guys. So in one episode, I'm not going to be able to throw everything at you, but just stick with me. Okay. Remember, we're breaking down what metabolic syndrome is. We talked about insulin resistance. We talked about abdominal obesity. Now, high blood pressure. Elevated blood pressure or hypertension may develop either before or after insulin resistance and abdominal obesity. Over time, insulin resistance and obesity can contribute to hypertension, right? I remember when I was dealing with hypertension, I had a lot of headaches and so forth. My blood pressure was just constantly high. I was under a lot of stress too, so that played a big part of it as well. So I was on blood pressure meds, as I mentioned before. So now let's move on to blood sugar levels. Remember, we talked about blood sugar levels a few moments ago when it came to insulin resistance, right? But now elevated fasting blood sugar levels is a marker of impaired glucose metabolism. So basically, glucose metabolism is when glucose is in the body metabolizes it or processes that glucose and uses that glucose for energy. But when you have elevated blood sugar levels, again, what could eventually be developed is prediabetes. That's when your blood sugar levels are higher than normal, but not so high that it's to the point of being diagnosed as full-blown type 2 diabetes. Again, prediabetes versus type 2 diabetes. When we consume certain foods or certain liquids, our blood sugar levels spike, right? They may spike a little or they may spike a lot, depending on what's going on in our bodies. But again, our bodies naturally create insulin to help regulate blood sugar levels. I can spend a whole episode just talking about that. But now let's talk about cholesterol and abnormal lipid levels. Now, this is really important, folks. When you're dealing with high cholesterol, you don't want to play around with that, because then you could eventually deal with some heart disease issues. You can experience quite a bit of issues when it comes to your cardiovascular health and be at risk, again, for developing coronary disease, clogged arteries, and so forth. In a previous episode, I talked about how they were thinking about putting a stent in my heart because I was experiencing some chest pain, some shortness of breath, and so forth. And thank God it never got to that point. So, I forget which episode that was where I kind of went in depth and talked about that. But the bottom line is metabolic syndrome is something that we don't want to ignore. The check engine light, we don't want to keep ignoring that. So the best solution is not just one solution. There's not just one fix to metabolic syndrome. The key is actually to look at our entire health profile. Just like when your check engine light comes on and you go to get it diagnosed, get your car diagnosed, and they say, oh, you know what? Your O2 sensor is failing. And also you're having an issue with your catalytic converter. You have an issue with, I don't know, it could be a litany of things that are going on with your car. And it's like, man, you know what? I wasn't expecting this. But guess what? Those issues, and in this case, we're talking about health, your health engine, your health, which is your car, if you will, your body has been giving you warning signs little by little. And sometimes one thing can lead to another thing, another complication. And then you have these things that just constantly build up and so forth. So those are some things that I want you to keep in mind. Now, here's the thing. It's important to focus on your blood, focus on your heart, focus on your liver, and focus on your gut. Out of everything that I've been telling you, I want to break it down to, again, your blood health, your heart health, your liver health, and your gut health. You've made it this far, so stick with me. You see, medications can indeed help manage metabolic syndrome, but the real key player of the show is an entire lifestyle change. Now, I know you may say, but Oscar, you know what? I hear what you're saying, but I've had high blood pressure my whole life or my whole adult life, and I'm managing it by taking blood pressure medication. Oscar, my cholesterol's been high, but as long as I, just take these meds, I should be good to go. I mean, you can just say, hey, I just want to stay on meds. It's just too complicated to try to turn my life around. I get it, but I don't want you to resign to just thinking, you know what, man, I can't do anything about it. My mom had type 2 diabetes. My father had type 2 diabetes. High blood pressure, quote unquote, runs in our family and so forth. So there's nothing I can do about it. I might as well just take these meds and, be okay with it. Well, folks, listen, I can't tell you how to live your life. All I can do is give you some suggestions and give you some personal things that I've done to really change my life. And I don't want you to, just kind of throw in the towel and be like, hey, Oscar, I tried everything and I hear what you're saying, but you know what? I'm just going to stick to the meds. But listen, our bodies are not designed to be on meds for long term. I really feel that if we really make a conscious effort to really turn things around, we can turn things around. And the thing about it is, why ride around forever with a check engine light and just wait for something bad to happen when we can just get a full diagnostic and find out what's going on and do something about it? I think we all want to be healthy. No one truly wants to just be taking medication and spending all this money on medication and so forth. Folks, when I say, getting off meds, I am not a physician. I am not your doctor. Any advice that I'm giving, any recommendation that I'm giving, of course, talk to your physician about it. I don't want you to just stop taking your meds because, this guy on TikTok and Instagram and in this podcast is telling you to get rid of meds. I'm not telling you to get rid of your medication. What I am telling you to do, or suggesting that you do, is to focus on your health. And the real solution to your health problems. I know some situations may be more advanced than the others, but I want you to have hope, folks. You know, when I was in that hospital and looking out the window, I was in the hospital for 5 days, and I had learned that I had type 2 diabetes, and I wasn't a frequent hospital resident. You know, basically it was far and few between times that I've actually gone to the hospital, you know, and never was it because of health issues, because, you know, fractured wrist or something like that, but, you know, nothing crazy. But my point is, food is the solution, because you know what? You can't out exercise a poor diet. Meds, I believe, have their place for treatment of certain conditions. But I really believe that consistent and long-term commitments to healthy habits is a cornerstone of treatment. Remember, it's all about progress. It's not about perfection. You know, to the Angies of the world and the Joes of the world, those who are working from home, those who are working in the office, those who are stressed out, those of you who are listening, whether you're here in the United States or overseas in other countries, whether it's Africa, Asia, some of my listeners down in Oceania, you know, Australia, maybe you're in Europe, wherever you are, I don't want you to give up hope. I want you to fight for your health, because that's what God gave us, our health. That is what we have, and we need to maintain, and we should maintain the zeal and the energy and the excitement and passion for life. So, like I said, food is a solution. What you eat can have a major impact on your health, folks. As my health started improving, my education started improving, and vice versa. The more my education started improving about nutrition and exercise and so forth, the more my health started to improve, because I was taking the things that I was learning and putting them into practice. You know, I wasn't jumping from diet to diet and doing all this stuff. I wanted to keep things very, very practical. So what you put in your body affects your blood sugar levels. It affects your heart health. It affects your digestion. It affects your weight. Did you know that your liver is the organ that produces fat? And that when excess fat builds up in the liver, fatty disease can occur? That's right. You know, fatty liver disease often leads to the development of type 2 diabetes. And I want you to take this away and do some homework. Research fatty liver disease and the causes of it. Now, some people may say, oh, well, yeah, fatty liver happens when you drink alcohol. Oscar, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink alcohol at all. Well, you don't have to be a consumer of alcohol to experience fatty liver disease. And there's a such thing called non-fatty liver disease. And that's what leads to type 2 diabetes typically. So I want you to research fatty liver disease. What does that have to do with our overall health? Well, you know what? Again, if your liver is responsible for producing fat, what happens when it's overworked and is constantly building fat, and you are consuming a lot of food, and a lot of not just fatty food, but just foods that you are not burning, if you will, calories that you're not burning, not just through exercise, but you're just eating a lot of food, and your liver is overworked, your gut is overworked, because you're feeding your body with a lot of processed foods, a lot of things that are really contributing to just bad digestion, and even some sicknesses that you may be dealing with, some gastrointestinal issues and so forth. So focus here for a second. I want you to keep an eye on your liver health. Keep an eye on your gut health. Learn about that. Keep an eye on your heart health. Remember, we talked about cholesterol. We talked about high blood pressure and the importance of focusing on your blood health. So there is an entire library of knowledge out there for us to go and just acquire knowledge about our blood, about our heart, about our liver, about our gut. Because, if we ignore those things, no wonder why the check engine light leads to worse problems later on. Okay, let's move on. Eating healthy food will change your life, folks. I'm telling you. I know some people may say, well, Oscar, I don't want to just be eating rabbit food all the time. I want to be able to enjoy my food. Now, eating healthy doesn't mean giving up the foods that you like, folks. It just means selecting better options. For example, how much of the following foods are you eating on a regular basis? Fried foods, for example. How much fried food are you eating? Whether it's French fries, fried chicken, whatever else you may be eating on a regular basis that's fried. Now, if you're eating fried food a lot and regularly, and it's a regular part of your diet, let me ask you a question. Why? Why do you eat so much fried food? Now, again, I'm not shaming anybody. I don't want you to feel bad. I'm not coming down on you, but I want you to rethink the necessity of eating fried food. Do you have to have fried chicken? Why not baked chicken? So you're not giving up the chicken. You're just giving up what's done to the food. You see? So I'm not vilifying eating, let's say chicken, but how is the chicken prepared? Okay. A lot of fried foods, if you're cooking with a lot of oils, a lot of vegetable oils and a lot of other oils, and things are just really saturated in oil. Why? We don't have to eat fried foods. So just kind of think about that. What about processed foods like hot dogs, sausages, your turkey meats, your deli meats and so forth, burgers, cakes, pies, breads, pasta, all these processed foods. How are they contributing to your health? Are they making a positive impact or are they making a negative impact? Maybe you don't know. It's important to find out. So personally, I stopped drinking sugary drinks like soda, fruit juices, and sports drinks. I gave up fried foods because fried food has no benefit to me. I would stop eating fried chicken. I used to eat fried chicken a lot and some other fried foods like French fries and so forth. And I was eating that stuff simply for taste, not because they had any health benefits. So once I started giving up the fried foods like the French fries and the fried chicken and other fried foods, man, my health started to improve. My heart health in particular started to improve. And my doctor gave me he gives me an A+ every time I go to go visit. All I can say is it's been the diet. It's been what I've been putting in my body and what I stopped putting in my body. On top of that, I started eating more vegetables and lots of fruit. I'm telling you, guys, I eat more fruits and vegetables than anything else. What about you? What about you? What role does vegetables play in your diet? I'm not talking about the occasional string beans, the occasional peas. I'm talking about on a regular basis. What are you eating with your meals, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner? What role does vegetables play in your life? My recommendation is that half of your plate should be vegetables. And then a third of your plate could be a protein. Protein is good for the body. Whether it's an animal protein or a vegetable protein like beans and so forth, lentils. I want you to consider that. Also, what about fruit? They say it's good to have 5 servings of fruit every day and 5 servings of vegetables every day, right? So just kind of keep that in mind, folks. I really believe that food is the solution. Now, folks, I can spend an entire episode talking about nutrition. The main thing I want you to take away from today is food is the solution. If your check engine light is on, if you've not been feeling well lately, you've been dealing with headaches, some mild chest pains. You went to the doctor and they told you that your blood pressure has been elevated lately. Your cholesterol level has been up. You have prediabetes, or even if you have type 2 diabetes, don't sit around waiting for things to get worse. Because, folks, I wish that back in 2018, when the check engine light first came on for me and I got that diagnosis with prediabetes, that I wish I had changed. I wish I had changed my approach to my health. Then I would have been spared the hospital visit. I would have been spared the near-death experience. I would have been spared from the near stent situation. I would have been spared a lot. I would have saved a lot of money. I would have done things differently, and I should have done differently. I could have prevented myself from gaining all that weight and that excess weight leading to other complications. You know, they say hindsight is 20/20. Well, you know what? Thank God that we have bodies that can give us warning signs like the check engine light for us to do something about it. I'm looking at a picture right now at my desk, and this picture was taken in 2019. I have a big smile on my face, but you know what? I was really heavy. And growing up, I was never a heavy person. Yeah, I have family members, who are heavy. But looking at my situation, I didn't gain all that weight because of this family member or this parent, was this size or whatnot. No, there's things that I did to get myself in that situation. And I wish I had been wiser and used the knowledge that I did have at the time to actually prevent myself from getting bigger. Because looking at this picture, man, I wish you guys can see it. I'm wearing a button-down shirt, and I remember my neck size was probably more than 17 inches. Wow, man. Yeah, it's so surreal. So my clothes weren't fitting. This was actually a picture that was taken at work. And at this time, I was dealing with prediabetes, but, had a big smile on my face because I thought nothing was wrong. And man, I wish I had turned things around. So, folks, I want to be an encouragement to you guys. Let my story and the story of others that you may have seen around you, some friends who have turned their lives around, let those stories, let my story encourage you. I can go on and on and on and on and tell you to do this and tell you to do that. But listen, every individual is responsible for their own journey. I want your journey towards good health and great health to be a great journey. Yes, you may be struggling with all kinds of things right now, metabolic syndrome and so forth. But listen, it's time to make the necessary changes in order to experience good, lasting health. I have well over 100 episodes, folks, that I have recorded that cover a range of topics, from kicking sugar cravings to dealing with food cravings, stress management, some of the best and worst diets, if you will, even how to read nutrition labels, because that's very important. So I want you to dig deep into the library episodes that I have. Visit my website at beatingdiabetieslifestyle.com to get more information. I have a lot of free resources out there. As a matter of fact, I have a weight loss planner that is a powerful tool that a lot of people have been downloading, and it's for free. All you have to do is go to my website, click the link. It's right there on the website for the weight loss planner, and you can have it. I think I also will put it in the show notes to this episode so that you can download it. But my friend, listen, putting a plan in place and tracking your progress and you making the changes that you need to make is very important to developing a lifestyle change where you can see positive results and you keep stacking those positive results. Listen, I know things may have been hard for you and may be hard for you now. You may be on medication. You may be concerned because you've had some loved ones to pass on because of type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, having heart attacks, and so forth. Listen, that doesn't have to be your story. You can make some positive changes. I simply want you to start making those changes today. So, my friend, as always, stay focused, keep moving, never go back, leap forward, bounce back because you can, my friend. And above all else, trust God. You got this. I believe in you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Beating Diabetes Lifestyle Podcast with Oscar Camejo. We hope you enjoyed this episode. As a reminder, this podcast is intended for motivational and educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional care by a physician or other healthcare professional or qualified fitness instructor. This podcast is provided on the understanding that it does not constitute medical or professional advice or services. If you're looking for help on your journey, seek a qualified medical practitioner. It's important that you utilize someone who is a trained, licensed healthcare professional who can help you on your journey toward good health.